From humble beginnings to the pinnacle of success, one man's journey proves that with determination, anything is possible. This is Catch as Catch Can with George Tinsley Sr., inspiring conversations of triumph over adversity. Here's George.
My guest today is Artis Gilmore, known as the A-Train, a towering figure in basketball history, both literally and figuratively. Standing at 7 foot 2 inches tall, this Naismith Memorial Hall of Famer dominated the courts in both the ABA and the NBA, earning 11 All-Star selections, an ABA championship, and setting numerous records. Artis, welcome to the show. And yes, I was reading that, Artis, because I wanted to make sure I got it all right, my friend.
Yes, sir.
Welcome to the show, and we're glad to have you, man. This show is kind of built around the book that my autobiography of Catch as Catch Can, Turning Obstacles to Opportunities, and your great history of where you came from to where you are today resembles that true message. So if you would, just kind of take us into Mr. Artis Gilmore, as you start off in Chipley, Florida, as one of 10 children.
Yeah, Chipley is, Chipley, Florida is in the northwest panhandles of Florida. And after graduation, which was segregated schools during that time, I moved over to Othan, Alabama, where I graduated from high school. And because of academic issues, I moved to junior college, which was a 2-year school. And during the time that I was there, they was in the process of moving and changing it into adding a third year and then a fourth year, which I would have been in the first graduating class. But then my dear friend and colleague, Ernie Fleming, he says, I have an invitation to go to Jacksonville University. And would you like to hang along with me? I said, oh, absolutely, count me in. So from there, after spending 2 years at Gardner Webb, I come to Jacksonville. And that's where we had tremendous success. My junior year, we played against UCLA for the national championship, and from there, I signed with the Kentucky Colonels. Supposedly this extraordinary 20-year contract, but at the end of 5 years, moved on to. After winning the championship in 1975 and one extended a year, that's when I was in the pool, the dispersal pool after the Colonels closed their door. And then from there, Chicago, San Antonio, back to Chicago for half a minute with Michael Jordan, and the other half of the minute with Larry Bird, where I completed my years in NBA and took my family, and we ended up going to Italy for a year. So that was educational, cultural experience. My last year in professional basketball.
Wow, quite a history there in that period of time. Yeah. So, but let's go back, Artis, to high school. You mentioned how you moved from one school to Dothan, Alabama, to graduate there. Did you play sport? What other sport besides basketball did you play there?
Well, George, as you mentioned earlier, I'm a product of a very, very large family. My father had no work. He was much older than my mother, and it was really, truly a struggle, even living off of welfare. That was during that time, and it was some very hard times in the country. Racism was really strong, and in fact, as I mentioned, I graduated from a segregated school in Dothan, Alabama, and there was just a just an incredible experience of a time of growth in those early years in Chipley, Florida.
All right. So Chipley, there you just played basketball, and then when you went to Dothan, you played basketball as well. You didn't play football or any other track or field or any of those sports, or there you just weren't allowed to play.
No, it's just that there was no space to play.
Ah, okay,
Yeah,
okay,
really.
okay,
I
okay,
could have possibly played uh, my senior year, but it did that didn't work out too well.
okay. So we go on to Gardner Webb. There you entered to the junior college, right?
It
Gardner Webb.
is, yes.
Yeah.
Gardner Well was a two-year program
Right.
that was on the verge during my time there of adding an additional year, and then uh, I would have been in the first graduating class if I would have remained at that
Right.
location.
Right. Right. So during your period at Gardner Webb, did you all have a what kind of team did you have then? I know you have some great teammates. I've heard you talk about them before. Great relationships there.
Oh yeah, I mean, really exceptional team. We made it to the nationals twice, the 2 years that I was there. And the first time we were eliminated the first round, and the second round we eliminated Pembroke Burroughs, who would end up being my teammate a little later.
Right. Right.
So he and Harold Falk, we eliminated him. And then later on that summer, we ended up joining meeting here at Jacksonville University.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So you go to Jacksonville, and that's where things really kind of take off there because you get a lot of exposure. You're playing against some of the top teams in the nation. What was that like as you looked back from where you came from, and now you're at Jacksonville University, and it's a major school. You're traveling first class or top, maybe not maybe not the UCLA, University of Kentucky travel level, but you're traveling and participating in at a whole different level. How'd that feel?
Oh, it was really, and I think it all due to the coach George and the personality and the way we were able to communicate versus, the previous situation at Gardner Well. I think those things, and of course traveling, playing with a different level of competition at the collegiate level, it just was an just a much uh, uh, elevated feeling of confidence, and that's what I was building during that time.
So just from perspective standpoint, of the 10 children, where did you rank in that number?
So I was the second oldest.
Second oldest. So were there any other brothers, sisters following in your footsteps in sports?
In basketball, yes, I had a couple of brothers that, one, my second oldest brother next to me in age, he played, well, actually was in junior college for a couple of years. I remember my mom was out raking leaves to find enough money to put him on a bus and send him back to college. And he was there. He remained there for a short period of time, and then shortly afterwards, he showed up on my campus, my doorstep at JU, and he was there for. He was out of school and he was done. But my brother, my third brother down, fourth brother down, his name was Thomas Gilmore. He just passed away. So I've lost all my brothers now; they're all gone.
My
But
condolences.
yeah, my youngest brother, he played in Finland, and he came back and he coached at Florida State with Joe Williams, my former coach, and uh, in that respect, but none ever not to the NBA level, but they played. And my youngest brother, he played in Italy as well, in France,
Okay. Okay.
and he was
Okay.
about 6'9" and a half, 6'9".
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering. I think I remember meeting one of your brothers when you were playing with the Colonels that came up in the Louisville area
Yes,
for a minute. Yeah.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So we're now into Jacksonville University. You're playing against some great competition during that time, and you still have family back in Florida in the Chipley area, and you're obviously concerned about them as well as concerned about your own moving forward. How was that, Artis, in taking your success to that particular point and being a role model for the younger sisters and brothers and those that you knew in the community that they could possibly do the same thing that you were doing?
Oh yeah, well, George, I don't know if you remember. You probably remember very well. In those days, at the collegiate level, you weren't allowed to leave and depart after 1 year or 2 years and enter the NBA or the other
Right,
league, which was the ABA. So uh, during that time, in fact, at the end of my junior year, and the success that we enjoyed during that time, um, my family was really, the kids and the brothers was really struggling, and I remember, I signed this supposedly really huge contract, and the first thing I wanted to do is improve their lives and make it. But you mentioned the fact is be an example for them, and that was one of the things that I was concerned about. I made sure that I continued uh, and graduated from in college before
right,
signing a contract professionally. So that would be within itself an example for them,
right,
uh, the family.
right. Because Spencer Haywood had already before he'd already jumped from college to the ABA. Was that correct?
It was in the ABA, and yeah, and then moving, yeah,
Right.
yes, that's absolutely correct,
Right. So yeah, so it had
sir.
been somewhat established. Well, that's admirable that you stayed and got your education. Tell us also about some of the great games that you had from Jacksonville University, the wonderful team you all had against as you played against UCLA and some of the other top teams in the country. As a matter of fact, I think you played for a championship. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. We played for a national championship against, and you mentioned the fact the top teams like UCLA. We played them for a national championship. But in the region, we played the University of Kentucky and Coach Adolph Rupp, and that was kind of a first time. But we were able to eliminate my dear friend, who now is Dan Issel, who I played against, and sometimes there was so many times, oftenly we talk about that game during the time that we were teammates with the Colonels, but beating Iowa. In fact, I had to foul out of the game. Pembroke made the last basket after Von Whitaker took a shot from the perimeter, and they had JJ and Fred Brown, just an incredible team. And then, of course, we played against St. Bonaventure, which Bob Lanier had just gotten an injury. That was in the Final Four. and so he wasn't able to play, and we we kind of scaled down, and we didn't play some of our best basketball, and as a result, we just barely dipped past St. Bonaventure, and they had Matt Gant, who played extremely well at center in the absence of Bob Lanier. But and then of course we played UCLA. They had Steve Patterson at that time, Sidney Wicks, Curtis Rowe, Henry Bibby, John Valley. Was kind of their starting five, and that was the team with head coach Wooten.
Yep.
Was able to eliminate us from the championship game.
All right. Now, who was on your team that year? Who were the players?
It was Rex Morgan, Pembroke Burrows, Chip Dublin, Von Wedekind, Greg Nelson, Danny Hawkins, a couple other guys, Rusty Baldwin, and we had a great core.
Yeah. How many of those guys went on to play professionally?
And of course Rod McIntyre. Rex Morgan was the one, and Rod had a really good tryout with the Nets at that time, and he said Billy Paul beat him out by a head and a nose, but
Pembroke could have played, couldn't he? Did he try out, or he decided not to?
He did. He tried out, and he was the last player cut by the Seattle, and that was really such a disappointment for him. He was, and in fact, they kept a guy. They ended up maintaining one of their players who had a guaranteed contract for about $30,000, so they wasn't gonna put him on waivers.
Right.
But Pembroke was a great young player, and he was so disappointed that he just kind of gave it up. He became the largest policeman in the country at 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, down in South Florida, right?
Yeah, in South Florida.
Yeah. I remember reading about it. So you signed with the Colonels in
Yes, sir.
1971?
No, that was 72, 73.
72. Okay.
Yeah, 71, 72 season.
Okay, 71, 72 season. And tell me about that signing. That was a pretty big. You mentioned 20-year contract they proposed. Is that correct?
Yes, and supposing it's astronomical large amount of dollars for 20 years, but and in fact I had to play most of it. So it was in one of those deferred monies type contract, but not just on in publicity. It was a huge deal, but in reality, it was not. But of course, for me, it gave me the opportunity to do something for my parents after remembering and thinking about what the experience was as a youth growing up. George, can you imagine when I turned 12 years old, I wore a size 12 and then 13, wearing a size 13 shoe. And you couldn't find, that was not, it didn't exist. So a couple of years, it was tough time. So when I was able to sign that contract, all those things come to fruition, and came right in front of my eyes, and thinking about that and what my mother experienced, over the years, having kids at home through midwife and the birth, all those times, and just having a hard time, and so when I was able to sign that contract, that it was just an incredible pleasure, to be able to watch my mother's eyes light up after being able to do some things, for her as well as my father.
Right. Well, as you mentioned two things there, I can remember as a sophomore in high school, I was 6'5" at the time and wearing a size 13 shoe, and but I couldn't find shoes no bigger than 11, and I had to make those 11 shoes fit, get my 13 size foot into those 11 shoes. Because you just couldn't find them other than the tennis shoes that you got playing on the team, and you couldn't wear those all the time. That was that my feet are messed up today because of that experience. And the other portion of coming from a tough situation, signing a contract, and of course my contract was 1 year with the Oakland Oaks in the ABA, and all of a sudden having friends and relatives that you knew nothing about prior to the contract. So
Yeah,
I can
yes,
only
yeah.
imagine in your situation
Right, right.
what you had to deal with. But that gives you a different perspective on family and friends, and some good, some bad as you move forward. And you're in a city now, Louisville, Kentucky, where you didn't know a whole lot of people. Who else? Who else came in that year? Was Dan? Dan came in that year also. Dan Issel.
No, Dan had already played.
He was
He
already
was,
there. Okay.
yes, he had played
Okay.
1 year. They were competing for uh, the ABA championship against the Stars at that time.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So who came in with you?
Well, I had a guy named Pierre Russell,
Right.
Mike Gale, and there was another young kid, one of the top draft choices, Pooh Welch, but he was a rookie, hurt his back, and so he did not sign with it. But we had 3 or 4 rookies that year that played.
And Claude Verdon was already there and Mike Pratt with Dan.
Yeah, so Clyde Verdon.
Claude Verdon
Claude Verdon, he came later.
later. Okay.
Yeah, we had Cincy Powell, Walt Simon, Goose Fliegen, Les Honor, and who else? Then, of course, we had Mike Pratt, I think, came along a little later. But
I think
it
Mike
was Louis
came.
Dampier.
Yeah, Pratt came in with Issel. They were the same year. They came in the
Okay.
same year. They came in 70. That was my last year with the Colonels. When they came in with that group is when the prior year I was a rookie. That particular year would have been my second year, and I was released because they were bringing in a lot of those new guys. That was the year before you came in. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
I was
Okay.
familiar
Yeah.
with that group. They changed administration, the ownership structure changed, general manager, Gene Rhodes had been the coach prior to that, and I think you had Hubie, right?
As the head, well, we had a number, Joe Mulaney. We had
Joe
2 or 3,
Mulaney.
Bay McCarthy.
Okay,
We had a few head coaches before, and
okay,
then Hubie came in last year. We won in 1975, and we won the championship.
okay,
And then the last year of the league,
okay,
we ended up moving on.
right. So tell me what your experience in coming into Louisville and playing with the Kentucky Colonels versus your prior experience. How did your approach to the game, your approach to teammates, how did that develop?
Well, we had a really good foundation, and the connection with the players, the teammates. They just made a world of a difference. Dan Issel and Louis Dampier, even to this day, we have a great relationship. And so we bonded very well. And we were able to do a number of things except win the championship. uh, because we probably was one of the best teams in the league, and at times I think we probably was the best team, but we didn't exemplify that as the years went on until we, Hubie arrived. We was able to put it all together.
Right. So your first year, you were Rookie of the Year and also MVP awards in your first season.
Yes, yes, sir. Uh, I was, man, I was feeling it, and I just felt that there was so much doubt in my mind. Could I compete at that level? And so I was hyped up and ready to go, and I was able to get it done, and of course receiving those complimentary awards.
hmm See, you're at center. Your biggest competition in the league that year was who?
Well, that was Billy Pauls, Caldwell Jones, uh, Maurice Lucas, and a couple of times, I even played against Billy Cunningham after he had came in with the Carolina Cougars. So,
Right,
uh,
right.
yeah, uh, it
And then,
was
then of course, Mel Daniels.
Mel Daniels. Oh, don't forget Mel.
Yeah,
Big, strong guy. Zelmo Beatty,
right,
who was another great, really great player, came over from the other league.
right. Prior to you coming into the league, a lot of the centers that were there were guys that had left the NBA and came into the ABA after their, you know, career had started to dwindle, with the exception of the Mel Daniels. Mel, of course, played in the league from start to start, and Billy Paltz, he had been in there. So when you came in, from my perspective, as I remember looking at the league, that center position was the one thing that brought the ABA up to the level of the NBA, because there's forwards and guards and whatever you want to call them. I think it was equivalent across ABA and NBA. There was a different style of play, but from the center position, we didn't have the real dominant big man like yourself that was in the league. And so I remember the great battles that you and Julius Erving had during those years. Of course, he's playing forward, but he was a high flyer. So
Absolutely, Julius. There was always excitement when we played against Julius. And there one other young man who came from high school that we don't want to forget, and that was Moses Malone.
right,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And so Moses came in probably I think about near the end of the league. Be-
75
Yeah,
is where. Yeah,
yeah. So uh, Moses brought about some excitement, especially coming from high school, straight from
right,
high school, and he was the first player because uh, the NBA was not taking young players. You had to spend 4 years or so that allowed the ABA to really, really kind of catch up with
right,
some great
right,
players because they
right.
was able to sign underclassmen.
Right. And we
But
shouldn't we shouldn't forget Spencer also, because Spencer
yeah,
was
y-
there. He was there
yeah,
before you, right? Yeah.
right, yes, absolutely, and Spencer Haywood. I mean, it was the sad part about it is there was no national market where the ABA was getting the same kind of exposure. The NBA was, very little exposure. I think maybe they had one network, and during that time there was only three networks, and so if they had a network, nobody else was going to go up against them, and because of that controlled kind
Right.
of a environment.
Right.
But uh, later on, I think part of my decision going to the ABA really helped develop those leagues as far as bringing them together.
Right, right, right. I agree. People like you and Julius and of course Spencer had already jumped over to the NBA real quick
And going through the courts, dealing with the courts.
Dealing with the court. But Artis, I remember as a ABA or in Kentucky Colonel in particular, playing in Annapolis, the Pacers, which is about an hour and a half drive from Louisville, playing there, the game being over, driving back home, and then being able to see the games played on TV afterwards. The same, the later on that night, and that was the only exposure that that the ABA was getting at the time. Pre Julius and yourself, and so when you guys came on the scene and the kind of crowds you started to draw, that really opened that whole TV market up, and negotiations started between the ABA and the NBA. So, is anything that you remember about some of those championship games that kind of stood out to you?
Well, and in particular, 1975, yes, and there was a lot really taking place and kind of a struggle, but we were able to win some big games down the stretch. And I think it was 23 out of 25 that we were able to win that really allowed us to excel and reach that level of competitiveness that allowed the team that we had in 1975, and that's with Louis and Dan and myself and Wilbert Jones, or Marv Roberts, Bert Everett. That group of individuals was able to put it together and make it happen.
Right. So you and Dan were the leading scorers, rebounders of that team, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And of course, Bert
Difference
Avery
maker.
could light it up. Bert
Yes,
Avery,
sir.
yeah. So, what was the biggest transition from the ABA to the NBA when you transitioned from the ABA going into the NBA? And I think, if I'm correct, but correct me if I'm wrong, that was there were certain players on the Kentucky Colonels team that were dispersed, contracts sold to the ABA to the NBA by John Watt Brown, who was one of the owners or the owner during the time. How did that all unfold?
Well, from what I understand, there was a dispersal pool, and I was put in that pool, and of course the Bulls had only one, but they had my rights initially from the beginning, from when I made the choice to go to the ABA, and they had my right, held my rights in the NBA. So that was pretty much a done deal that I was gonna, if I come once I entered the NBA, was going to be the Bulls. That particular year, they only won 24 games, and then they were taking me first, and they had a first round draft from at the collegiate level, and that was Scott May. And we had a pretty pretty good group of guys, but for whatever reason, they was experienced guys, and they were old Bulls, and they just had new faces, including myself, and it was a transition period. It was really, really tough. And
Was Tom Bowinkle on that team?
Tom Bowinkle was there, and Norm Van Leer.
Yeah.
Jerry Sloan was supposed to come back. He had gotten hurt and had surgery, and he was just not ready to come back and play.
Was Clem still there then?
No.
Clem left. Okay. Okay. Chet the Jet was gone also.
Yeah, he left that year as well.
Had some great team. I was drafted by the Bulls also. Yeah, when I came out,
Okay.
I remember the guys that were on the team at the time. When I was Chet the Jet,
Yeah,
Bob Love,
right.
Borwinkle.
Well, they ended up trading Bob Love. Bob, he was a funny guy. He always every year he held out. It's tried to get something deal. But then when I got there, it was a older veteran team, and they was trying to change the mindset, especially after winning only 24 games a year before I arrived, and then we started off not much better. So and the end of that season, we had a really really great run. We played Portland for it was the best 2 out of 3 games. And you imagine flying back and forth to Portland, play one there first, and then come back and play one in Chicago, and then going back to Portland to play the third and final game. And we played very well and had a chance to win that game right at the end, but we ended up losing it. But the Portland Trailblazers at that time, they was able to go on and win the championship. And they said, the toughest series they had was probably against the Bulls. And Bill Walton claimed that to this day. And
So, Artis, as you're moving along now, I don't want to forget about your family back in Florida, and of course, I think at this particular time you're getting married, and you're involved in the communities that you're playing in. How did that psychologically? How did you approach that as you moved along and had all these the family members and the followers that you were taking care of as well? How did you handle all of that as you were moving through your career?
thanks, George. The one thing that really was pretty special was is that initial opportunity. Remember growing up in the little shack that we call home, and
How many rooms?
it just like 2 rooms actually.
Wow.
Uh, it was 2 rooms, and we had kind of a kitchen part of it, and in fact, initially in the beginning, uh, we didn't have power in the house. No electricity and no running water. We had to go outside and do everything from perimeter. Fresh water running through from the faucet, and carrying a little bucket around and make sure you was able to bring that into a location. Uh, but those times was most people would say a treasure, man. I wish they had a good old time. But return to the old good old times. But no, they were really some tough days, real tough days, and that financial opportunity that I was able to get and be able to share that with the family. And then, of course, you mentioned the fact that I, just got married, starting to get married, and then my thought process was kind of moving forward. And shortly afterwards, we had our first child, a little girl, and my priorities had really started to change and really focus on a combination of family as well as learning to continue to learn to play the game that I love, and be able to perform at a high level and be productive.
Right. Well, you did a great job, man. I admire you for that, and it is kind of heartwarming to hear some of those things because I could identify with some as I grew up. another segment that I want to kind of mention, just slide it in here. During your time in Louisville, you and I had an opportunity to play together during the summer at what's called the Dirt Bowl in Louisville, Kentucky, down in the West
Yeah,
End.
yeah.
In which you describe that to the audience of what that was like playing in that Dirt Bowl, similar to the Rutgers League up in New York.
Right. And I was kind of a big deal in Louisville at the time, and and for me to show up like you mentioned the Rutgers, I remember when my junior college years, my friend and I, Ernie, we went up to the Rutgers and we were standing up there, and I remember watching Wilt Chamberlain lean up against the fence, and it was just amazing, that particular part where so many great players would come to play. And so that was likewise that in the Dirt Bowl in Louisville, and so a big deal. I went down to play, and so many other young players, and then of course they had this Double D there, there, and supposedly, the word is going around that he came in and threw one down on me, but I'm here to tell you that didn't
That
happen.
didn't happen.
It did happen.
Yeah, we're
But
we're talking about Daryl Griffith. Those of you who may not have heard, but Daryl Griffith was actually ours. I think when you were your first year playing down there, Daryl was actually in junior high school. He was in the ninth grade in junior high school, and then he went, of course, into high school. And Wade Houston and myself were coaching Daryl during the high school, and part of our rule was that if you were played on the team, you couldn't play in the Dirt Bowl because we were worried about injuries and so
right,
forth. But it was pretty physical, so that kind of stopped that thing about him dunking on you. And
right.
yeah,
Okay,
just yeah,
okay. I'm
yeah,
glad you.
yeah, yeah. But that rumor is strong today in Louisville, Kentucky, that
I
Daryl
know.
Griffith dunked on Artis Gilmore. So
Yeah,
now we heard it from the horse's mouth.
yeah. A mule.
Yeah. But that park is a huge park in West End Louisville, and it would literally take you an hour and a half to drive from the entrance to the court where we were actually playing. And I remember one of the times that you came, you brought your Rolls Royce and parked it
Yes.
right in front of the in front of the court, and everybody was running over there. You had a telephone in that Rolls, and that was, I mean, just blew everybody's mind.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
man, yeah,
So
yeah.
those are great times. So jumping back, Artis, about your career in the NBA and success, is there anything that kind of jumps out there that I haven't asked that you might want to relay?
If there was George not getting the kind of exposure because of the resentment, I think the NBA uh, just kind of expressed towards me because I signed with the ABA instead of the NBA, and initially in the beginning.
Right.
So that's kind of out there, but I think uh, some of the exposure or coverage that I never received because of those things. But you know, you can match my numbers up against anybody, and certainly there's an indication that I was equally successful or even better. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Well, artists, those of us who have played the game and understand the game certainly know that your career matches uh, just about anyone has played. Being inducted into the Naismith Hall of Fame kind of documents that you were known as a gentle giant, and that's kind of the way you approached life. You didn't have to knock people down and step on them or do something crazy to really drive your point in your career to anyone. You did it your way. You're playing. We didn't get into it, but you're playing with George Gerving was something special. Your period there in San Antonio. If you want to touch base on that, that's fine.
Yeah, George, and I like the way you said the Frank Sinatra thing. I did it my way.
Exactly.
But, playing with George was really, really great. He had a great personality. George had a smile on his face, and it was just incredibly a person, and the way he felt about the game was coming to him so easily. And I remember one All-Star game that we played in Los Angeles. And in fact, Marvin Gaye sung the national anthem
Wow,
in
yes.
this particular All-Star game. And George and I were on the team. And during the game, Pat Riley was the coach. And he did not, George felt that he didn't really treat him right during the game. So the next night, we remained in LA because we were going to play them the next game when the season opened back up. George came out, man, he was on fire. He knocked in 44 points, and I remember one shot, he was falling out, going out of bounds behind the basket, and released the ball and nothing but net. But George, he just put on an exhibition like I have not experienced in a long time, and many years in the game. And it was all because of an emotional experience in the All-Star game prior to that, which I mentioned Marvin Gaye sung the national anthem, which was just really, really incredible. And the first time that version of the national anthem was ever expressed or sung.
It was iconic. I can remember the day. It's one of those things that you remember where you were when that happened. I was living in Jacksonville, and I had my son and my daughter. My wife was gone somewhere, and we were watching the game. And when he started singing, just like chills went through your body, man. Yeah. But the Iceman with the finger roll, and his number was 44. Really, I'm going to go back and take a look at that game.
Yeah, please do. And it was really funny. George Gervin, you mentioned George Gervin with the finger roll. And so, George, you're not the first person with the finger roll. That was Big Dipper, Wilt Chamberlain, the finger roll. George said, well, I just took it to another level.
And then he had that big booming laugh that would come, would follow that.
Yeah.
Well, Artis, I appreciate you spending time with us. We could probably go on for another hour, but we've kind of hit that bewitching time. But we're honored to have you, man. We want to wish you continued success in life for you and your family, and look forward to catching up with you out there on the golf course and hit a few balls and reliving some of our friendship over the years, man. It's been a pleasure having you on our podcast here.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And I look forward to hitting a few balls with you and reflecting on some of those earlier memories.
Right. Okay, buddy. Thank you.
All right, sir.
This has been Catch as Catch Can. Your success story is waiting to be written. What will you catch today? Go to tinsley.speaks.com for exclusive content, resources, and opportunities. Catch as Catch Can with George Tinsley Sr. is a production of Advantage Media.